Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for another session in our Climate Action webinar series of 2021. My name is Heidi Creighton. I'm FAIA and co-chair of the AIA California Codes Chapter Outreach Subcommittee. So I'll be moderating today and also doing some speaking. As you know, AIA California has developed an in-depth series focused on understanding and implementing the AIA framework for design excellence. So this series is going to be running through the end of this year, and it'll feature monthly hour-long climate action webinars, as well as 90-minute webinars that are a deeper dive into technical topics like today. So additionally, AIA California has partnered with various organizations to bring bonus content to you in the comfort of your own office, wherever that may find you. And as always, all the webinar content and additional resources will be available on the AIA California website shortly after each session. We have just a few quick housekeeping reminders before we get started. Please use the Q&A function, so not the chat function, but the Q&A function to ask any questions for today's presenters. And a nice feature of that too is you can also like somebody else's question and that'll help move it up to the top of the queue. October is next week, just around the corner. So we wanted to make sure that you don't miss out on the upcoming Monterey Design Conference. And this year it's virtual, coming to you wherever you are. And the virtual formats are a way of inviting you to see what makes this conference the Architects Retreat and why we have so many loyal attendees. And our headline speakers are going to be joining us from around the globe, from Portugal, from Japan, from England, Boston, and of course, California. So make sure to clear your calendars. That's October 21st and 22nd. So carve out some time for yourself to focus on these amazing architects and how their work is shaping our world. Now on to today's webinar. So this session is going to qualify you for 1.5 AIA HSW learning units for those of you that are watching live, and the AIA California staff will report those hours for you. So the session is being recorded, just so you know, and that this session will also be posted on the AIA California website with some additional resources and the PDFs of the presentations that you'll see today. Today's session, we're going to look at 2 case studies and the impact of post-occupancy evaluation. So I'd like to quickly introduce today's presenters before we get started. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Heidi Creighton again. I'm an associate principal at Bureau Happold, lead fellow, WELL faculty, and FitWell ambassador. So I'm a sustainability consultant. I work across building, master plan, and portfolio scales. I really focus on health and well-being and circularity and social equity. And I've been active in the green building industry for about 15 years and served on the USGBCLA board of directors for about 6 years. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm currently serving on the AIA California Code Steering Committee. We also have with us Natalia Traverso Caruana, and she's the director of interior architecture at Morphosis Architects, and she leads the firm's approach to designing healthful, high-performance interiors across all types in the office. Over her 18-year tenure at Morphosis, Natalia has played a major role on numerous award-winning projects through all phases of design and construction. And now she's utilizing that extensive experience to execute the next generation of Morphosis projects, including a new global headquarters building for Lululemon and a new embassy campus in Lebanon. We also have Amy Eiler, who's an associate professor of public health and the deputy director of the Prevention Research Center at the Brown School at Washington University in St. Louis. And the focus of her research is on how policies in the built environment impact chronic disease prevention. And that's mainly through behaviors such as physical activity and healthy eating. She has expertise in evaluating workplace, community, and school-based interventions to understand how they shape wellness opportunities. She's also a nationally known expert and the author of over 100 peer-reviewed publications in 3 books, including one of the first textbooks on research methods for public health. Dr. Eilers has a bachelor's degree in community health, a master's degree in physical education from Ohio University, and a doctorate in public health from Oregon State University. And then finally, we also have Neil Matsuno, and his breadth of work focuses on contributing to the built environment with a common mission to advance environmental sustainability, occupant well-being, and diversity and inclusion. He's a higher ed design thought leader, and he brings expertise in experiential learning environments, building systems, and classroom technology to support emerging pedagogies. Collaborating with leading social scientists using evidence-based research, he has proven how building design can positively impact occupant behavior to promote healthy outcomes. So we have an incredible panel here with us today. And so we're going to kick it off with our first case study, and I'll pass it over to Natalia to get us going.
Thank you very much, Heidi. So I'm going to start talking about our design for our new office. Morphosis was in the Santa Monica office for over 30 years. And I've been in the office for 20 years now. And I remember how exciting it was. Like in the whole time I've been there, I remember thinking at that moment, it was so significant for everyone. We were designing our own building. We had the opportunity to purchase a new plot of land in Culver City. And yes, we had the opportunity to design something very meaningful, something in line with Morphosis design philosophies. And so we set out to doing this. We wanted to design an inspiring environment that promoted creativity, design a building that was healthy to work in, and promoted wellness. And also through this design, we thought this opportunity could demonstrate our values to our client. Just going to pin myself. So the concept was threefold. There were three parts to it. The first was to design an open warehouse. We wanted it to become a space that was filled with air, light, and a volume, something like an open warehouse. And the second was a blank canvas. And when I say blank canvas, I mean not a sculptural, crazy building that really announces itself, more the opposite, something more discreet, but something that would host our inventions, our experiments, and the art the office would produce. So something in between a warehouse space and a museum, something in between. And then the third, but very important for us, was the net zero goal for this building. So this is the image of the inside of the office. You can see it's very open, very light and airy and volumetric. We wanted to make sure the space was unoppressive and felt fresh. We wanted everyone to look forward to coming to work in this space. And then this is an example of the blank canvas. Now, I say blank canvas, it's filled with art, it's filled with experiments, it's filled with our little models on the top right-hand corner. All of these are little design iterations of some project, and they're all wonderful ideas, but they didn't get selected for some reason or another. But we want to display that. We wanted to be inspiring for everyone, and we wanted to feel fun and changing. And this extends to the outside. So this is the facade. You can see the facade is merely a unistrut ready to hang our experiments or hang our facade mock-ups. You can see we have a mock-up of Emerson College on the right-hand side. And then we even have material testing. So we have sometimes, facade panels that could be made of slightly different finishes. And we leave them out there, see how they respond to the sunlight, to the rain, and then come back and see which one has the desired effect. And then third, and also with this slide, I want to talk a little bit about the net zero goals. We wanted a building that was environmentally conscious, conscious of the user well-being and conscious of its carbon footprint, and also very conscious of our message to our clients. We would be setting an example if we could achieve this, right? And this is an example of a slide that we often show our clients at the beginning of projects. I feel like as architects, we have a commitment and responsibility. It's our role to encourage our clients, to guide our clients in a healthier and more sustainable direction. And usually in projects, we try to introduce this early on, you know, those blue sky sessions where everything's possible, everybody's excited about everything. We'll introduce it right there. This is exciting. This is such a story. This is very meaningful. And everyone that needs to be in that meeting is there. And so you're sort of planting the seed early and nudging everyone in that direction early on in the design. And we try every time. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes not so much, but at least we're successful in trying. So we wanted to own our own net zero building. And we knew that if we did this, we would be in a much better position to have this conversation with the client. We can speak from experience. We can speak from the example that we've set. So building this building was our chance to follow through on what we push every time we design a building. So we started our building design and set out the parameters for achieving net zero. So we needed to mitigate the solar gain. So reduce the amount of solar energy coming into the building. We wanted to harness daylight and wind, and we are in Los Angeles. This building is in Los Angeles. It's sunny most of the time. We have to capitalize on that. We did provide underfloor air distribution so that the heating would be close to the user, and we didn't have to heat or cool the whole space in order for you to feel the temperature difference. And of course, the photovoltaic power. I mean, without that, we wouldn't be able to achieve net zero. And then at the end, I have net zero and happy users. It's so important to us. Like, this goal comes together hand in hand. You know, we want the users to love the building. We want people to come into work excited about working that day and feeling like they're in a space that's inspiring. We're all architects in that building. And I will say just a moment, as I speak, I'll be bouncing from client decisions, user experience, and architect, as somehow I was involved in a lot of those for this building. So this is a slide showing our like a basic axonometric of the building. I have a north arrow here, so you know this is north facade, and over here we have our west facade facing the garden. And the other two facades, the south and the east, we didn't have windows in those. The south facade is actually up against the train. So, you know, we're right up against the train in Culver City. So we hear that all day. But you can see, I'll show you the next image, how the trees really provide a lot of shading to those large windows that we have facing the garden and facing the west. The foliage does a really great job of shading that facade. And the other window is actually on the north. And then we have skylights on our roof, and they really have a gorgeous diffusion of light coming in through the space. They really fill the space with light, such a beautiful soft light. When clouds come over the space, you can actually feel it in there, you know, so it changes while you're inside the space, almost like you're feeling nature inside the building, basically. Yes, so together with the skylights and these large windows that we have, we get ample light coming into the office, mitigating the need for much artificial lighting. So this is an image of the inside of the building, and looking up at the skylights. We have these, the skylight's actually quite small, and then there's like a pyramid shape that opens up that, almost opens up that diffusion of light, so it expands and then it comes into the space. At the top of you know, that opening skylight, we actually have a translucent screen. And I do want to share this, that it took us a couple of months to get that screen on. So there was moments in the office when the light would come and shine on you, and we'd make an internal joke that you were the chosen one at that occasion, and possibly the chosen one to go get a cup of tea at that moment. But this lady put her sunglasses on and powered through it. But we do have the translucent screen now, so we don't have to worry about that. But with this slide, I did want to talk about the artificial lighting, because we do have lights all around, as I've noted in yellow, all around the skylight. And we have these daylight sensors that are connected to the lighting controls. And then these lights, depending on the light levels inside the building, they will dim and switch off or on. And it's very gradual, very seamless. We basically don't notice when they're switching on or off because it's such a slow transition. Then natural ventilation, that really plays a major part in our office. We do have those large windows that I showed you upstairs, downstairs, and on the north facade. And we also have these large doors on the north, which also open up. But the main prevailing wind is coming from the west to the east in Culver City. And so these openings that face the garden too, they are predominantly the ones that affect the flow coming into the office. So those openings, and together with our monodraft wind catchers, provide that ventilation through the office. So the air comes through the garden into the office, brings those scents from the garden right in, which is wonderful, and then comes up on the east side, on the other side of the office, up the ceiling and out of these wind catchers. And here I have a little diagram where you can see what's happening. So the air is coming right across the office and up. I'm following the red arrows right now. And this is the stale air that comes out. And even on the other side of the wind catcher, some fresh air can come back in. It's directed by these louvers and comes into the space. And I have a little image of a wind catcher up here from below. I used to sit under them for a long time. And this is an image of those sliding doors. Now, what you don't know is that these sliding doors actually, they don't just open once, they open twice. So this door nests onto the next one, and then both of those nest onto the one on the right. So the whole space opens up, and it's a massive opening. I mean, in our office, in the time that I've been there, we hardly ever put any cooling for the space. In winter, it can get cold, and sometimes it's the jacket or the heating. and we do both sometimes. But cooling, it's a very cool space in the office. And then this is the image of the underfloor heating and cooling. As I mentioned before, it's great because it's adjacent to the user, which means that you just have to really heat and cool the space immediately in contact with the user, and you don't have to heat the whole volume in order for them to feel the temperature change. And there's a lot of flexibility under there. You can add, remove vents as needed, and there's user controllability, so you can open or close the vents if you want to while you're inside the building. If you're cold and cold air is coming out, you can close it. And then we have our photovoltaic panels. I mean, this is the powerhouse and the energy for our building. We're basically producing the same amount of energy. I mean, net zero is producing the same amount of energy as we use inside the building. So we needed this whole area. We have 2,800 square feet of photovoltaic panels, and without them, we couldn't meet our net zero goals. So our net zero goals run hand in hand, as I mentioned before, with our concern for employee happiness. We want our employees to love the building. We want them to be happy to come into the work. We want them to love the space. And so I'm going to talk about a few ways that we try to encourage that or enhance that. So we have a variety of work environments. This one that you're seeing here is a regular open office space, but we also have lots of tables outside. the main wood one at the center always dominates the activity and everything going on. People just love it. It's this wood table, massive, right in the middle of the garden. But we also have all these little meeting tables outside, and lots of people come out and use them throughout the day. And you're welcome to, use them if you want to go outside and connect with nature. It's very biophilic, this design. Or, we have the space up in the mezzanine. I love working in this space. I feel like there's, you're working, you look out the window and it's like an explosion of greenery coming into the space, but it's really magnificent out there. It makes you feel like you're in a different space, like you're in a tree house. But also this space is a little bit more private. It's not open to the general work area downstairs, and it's connected to the meeting rooms upstairs in the space. And then this is our conference room, front and center, right at the entrance of the building and right connected to the garden. This is the room that you can open up these doors, and literally your conference room is outside when that happens. You get butterflies coming in, you get all sorts coming in, which is it's wonderful. And so most of the spaces in the office have this, biophilic design concern. We have all the spaces I've spoken about, and even inside the office, with the natural ventilation coming in and bringing in the sense of the garden, and then, the light, the natural light in the skylights, and the movement of the clouds actually affecting you inside the space. All of that really does contribute. We also designed some areas that, perfectly set up for connection between the employees. We like to celebrate in our office. We work really hard, but we also like to celebrate hard. We want to celebrate deadlines. We want to celebrate competition wins or losses, actually. We even do that. It's like, it's not fair. We already lost. What? We're not going to party either. But we do like getting together. And so here you can see we designed an actual barbecue outside in this planted element in the garden with a little fire pit. And the kitchen area is always ready for a big party. And here you can see the image of all of us breaking bread outside. And families are invited, pets are invited. Everybody can come to this event. There's times that we do it weekly, times that we do it monthly. It just depends on the time of year. Somehow in summer, it happens more. But I don't want you to think that we only get together to drink or to eat. We also like to sweat together. We have our baseball annual event that we participate in, this Architect Baseball League. And we also actually have, pull-up competitions sometimes on Friday afternoons, or push-up competitions, and really encourage people to go to the gym to work out. Now it's been a while because we're all working from home, but I personally used to set up, go around local gyms in the area and set up like a subsidized rate for working out, because we really do believe in keeping fit, keeping healthy, eating well, and having a wonderful environment within the office. It's all together really helps the person. And so, as I was saying, our net zero goals are running hand in hand with creating a space that really will enhance the user experience. We want to make sure that everybody is happy to come to work every day. And so after the design was realized, we wanted to test out our building. We've made all these measures to create and design what we wanted in a net zero building. But what is happening? We wanted to understand what is happening with our building. We wanted to learn how we could do things better. Could we change something? Could we change the way we use the building? How could we use the space in a better way? We wanted to become more knowledgeable as well. How could each individual make a difference in the amount of energy produced by the building? And this is why we carried out our post-occupancy evaluation. We wanted to learn how the building was performing and how we could make it perform better.
Thank you so much, Natalia. I'm realizing it's so hard to follow you. I have charts and numbers, those beautiful imagery. But thank you for setting the stage. So Bureau Happold, we did the MEP engineering, we did the lighting design, energy modeling, and the computational fluid dynamics modeling, right, to help Morphosis meet that net zero goal and have a really healthy workspace. We did a deep dive with them on that engineering and analysis. And then we got to continue to be engaged with the building and with Morphosis on the POE. So I'm going to go through some of those details with you now. So, oh, sorry. Let me just make one. Okay, thank you. So the bar chart here on the left, that shows the energy use intensity for the project, and we reduced that using, passive, active, and renewable strategies. And the two bar charts on the left, those are the benchmarks. The third is the modeled performance, and the bar chart on the right is the actual performance. And the passive and active design measures that led to a 50% reduction in the office energy use compared to the similar benchmarks there of a Culver City office space. And then with the inclusion of the renewable energy, the reduction compared to the benchmark was 80%. And then that chart on the right, that really just shows the importance of design feedback during occupancy, right? When a building goes unchecked, the energy use increases, and that also typically is paired with occupant dissatisfaction. Okay, so next slide. So W. Edwards Deming once said that without data, you're just another person with an opinion, which I think is just so true, right? So it's so important to get the data and to analyze it. And POE just provides us with such a huge opportunity for design teams, but also for the owners. And we really need to push to stay engaged with our projects and not be locked out as soon as it's complete. So, POE, it really allows us to help understand how the building's performing, how we can further optimize its performance, what impact is our design and building having on the occupant productivity and health and well-being and satisfaction. And it's also, too, a really good opportunity to engage the occupants of the building so that they're much more aware and understanding of their behaviors and that impact, especially when you're trying to meet these really high sustainability goals around net zero, net positive, energy, carbon waste, etc. Okay. So this is the equipment that we used. So the first, I'll start on the left, it's a digital HVAC analyzer, and we use that to check the air supply flow rates. The next one is relative humidity and temperature. So we recorded measurements at 4 different spaces throughout the office to determine the thermal comfort conditions. We used light meters to determine if the skylights were providing adequate light or too much light. The next is the carbon dioxide monitor and tracer gas test that confirmed the air exchange rate and the effectiveness of the ventilation in the monodraft units. And then we also did electric submetering. So that really provided us with a really more in-depth analysis of the energy use breakdown. And it really also allowed us to look at the solar PV array to see if that was operating as we would expect. Okay, next. So this radar chart shows the outcomes of the occupant survey that we did with the staff. And this with the center being dissatisfied and then the outer ring being very satisfied. And so you see there in the red is an average building, orange is an average green building, and then the green is Morphosis Architects. And as you can see, their office is performing better across almost every aspect of occupant satisfaction. And then 85% of the occupants felt very satisfied with the overall performance of the building. And 80% of the occupants felt the building is improving their productivity. So when you look at the numbers and profitability, right, that's huge to have 80% of your occupants feeling more productive than they had been in a prior space. And then due to such high levels of occupant satisfaction across all these categories, the project actually received a Liveable Building Award from the Center of the Built Environment. Okay, so now I'm just going to walk through each of the different categories here. So here's the office, the satisfaction levels with the office lighting. So as you saw in those beautiful pictures, there's evenly diffuse lighting levels through those large windows and with all of the skylights that Natalia shared with us. And she talked about those daylight sensors that are connected to the light fixtures. So we took light measurements just to kind of fine tune some of the lighting controls and address any issues that staff was having with glare. And the space is just so beautifully lit. And Natalia and others have said when the lights come on and off, they don't even notice. It's just so seamless, and they really don't come on until late afternoon or into the evening. Next slide. So here's the satisfaction levels with the ventilation, and as Natalia shared, right, those huge sliding windows, the operable windows upstairs, and the monodraft units. That really enhances the natural ventilation of the project, and it allows it to operate according to the internal and external conditions. So when it's nice out, they can really open up the building, and when it's not nice, they can close it up. And then Natalia also talked about the underfloor air distribution, right? And that's really a great strategy for supplying that fresh air much closer to the breathing zone. And as she said, not having to condition much of that high volume space that they have there. Okay. And then, so next slide is the satisfaction levels with thermal comfort. And I guess about 2/3 of the Morphosis staff felt that the thermal comfort in the office was satisfactory. Thermal comfort can be a tricky one, but actually 2/3 is better than most offices. Okay, next slide. So here's some concrete examples of the improvements that we made as a result of the POE. So on the left, that's some of the windows upstairs. There weren't blinds added initially, so the staff sitting there were having some issues. So blinds have been added subsequently. The next photo, that's somebody changing out the wind catcher control sequence. What was happening was the temperature band between when the heating would stop, and then when the wind catcher would open up, thinking the space was too hot was too tight of a band. So the underfloor air would kick in, heat up the space, and then wind catchers would say, "Oh wait, it's getting too warm in here," and it would open up and then flush out all that air. And then so we just were able to expand that temperature band with the control sequence, and that was a big energy savings. There's one of my colleagues who's actually literally just changing the air nozzle diffuser up there because one of the staff members was just getting a little bit too much of the airflow right on her at her desk. And then, as Natalia said, right, originally the fabric diffusers were not in the skylights, and those were creating hot spots for the staff. You saw the sunglasses, so those fabric diffusers were added in. And the next slide. And then we also were really closely monitoring the PV array and that's performance. And we noticed it was degrading a lot more quickly than we anticipated for a new photovoltaic array. But there was construction happening close by. So we recommended to Morphosis that they clean the PV arrays. And so those three areas, the three red arrows, are when cleaning was happening. There's a lot of construction, a lot of dust at that time in particular. And every time they cleaned them, you could see the efficiency jump back up of those PV arrays. And so I imagine, Natalia and colleagues would have cleaned the PV arrays, but if we hadn't been looking at that data and scrutinizing it as early as we had, it probably would have gone unchecked and continued with subpar performance. Okay, next slide. The pie charts here on the right show Morphosis's actual energy usage, and that's breakdown compared to a DOE typical office. So blue is the lighting, red is HVAC, and green is power. So it's just an interesting comparison here. There's lots of opportunities to continue to improve and tweak things, and a lot of that's around occupant behavior changes. Turning off the lights and wearing layers and dressing more appropriately to the outdoor weather, using task lighting instead of the overhead lighting, especially there's just a few people in the office, and use of a dashboard too that makes the energy and water usage, etc., visible to staff can also have a really, really significant impact on staff's behavior. But I think the amazing story here is really with the HVAC numbers, as you can see that DOE typical office, and then the very small percentage of the 100% pie chart, right, of what Morphosis is using is really incredible. Okay, next slide. So just to wrap up this case study, that the Morphosis staff has really demonstrated significant improvement in productivity through that occupant survey that we rolled out, and that really has a substantial impact on their profitability. And Morphosis is one of the most energy efficient commercial buildings in the nation. It's also all electric. I'm not sure if Natalia and I mentioned that early on, but that's also really, really important. And it's the building just generally is exceeding the occupants' expectations. So, having that early collaboration between the architects and the engineers and the end clients, and then supported by detailed monitoring and analysis, that really ensures a healthy and high performance workplace. And POE just allows us to learn from our designs, and it's a fantastic feedback loop, which is really essential to continuing operation and performance improvements in our projects. So that's our first case study. So Natalia is going to stop sharing, and then Neil's going to start sharing. So bear with us 1 second while we get that queued up. But I'll go ahead and dive in. I'm kicking off this case study. So for this next case study, we're going to be looking at a classroom and faculty office building at Washington University in St. Louis for the Brown School of Social Work. I think you can probably go ahead and click through. Let's just show that beauty shot, the same one that Amy has behind her and her. Perfect. Thanks, Neil. So on this project, we were MEP engineers, energy modelers. We did fire, life safety, IT, lighting, and we also got to do sustainability and health and well-being consulting on this great project. So I just wanted to give a little bit of context before handing it over. But the Brown School's mission statement is to create positive social change through research and educational excellence. And they have a fantastic array of core values around transparency, health, diversity, inclusiveness, and sustainability. So really, building a building that embodies those core values. We embedded social equity and health and wellness in the design thinking, along with sustainability from the initial phases. And that was really critical to the outcomes in the design of the building. We wanted a healthy building, an inclusive environment that also touched the earth lightly. And we started the project in 2012. That was years before the launch of Well in 2014 or Fitwell in 2017. And we had a really unique opportunity with the occupants in the existing buildings, and then with the expansion project to really develop a human-centric approach, that would result in high occupant satisfaction while also achieving LEED Platinum certification. So some of the key drivers for this design and engineering team was to encourage collaboration, to create really strong indoor and outdoor connections, consideration of physical, cognitive, and sensory environment, and to create a healthy workplace. And so there are some great strategies developed and research study. So I'm going to pass it off to Neil and to Amy, and they will get into the details of that.
Great. Thank you, Heidi. So just kind of quickly, just want to give you an overview of what we're going to be going through this afternoon, is describe a little bit where Hillman Hall is and how it fits into the kind of campus context, and how this was really a unique experience where we started with these participatory workshops at the beginning, and very fortunate to have a really enlightened client. So if you're ever going to do a building that features health and wellness, a school of social work is where you want to work. And Amy will go through some of their kind of goals and objectives, and talk about this really unique opportunity that we had to engage with the formal research project that has been published. So the Hillman Hall is really the kind of first of a number of projects on a very ambitious project called the East End Transformation, where it's one of 6 new buildings, a addition to a museum, and an underground parking garage. So we were the kind of first building there on the hill to do this. And so this is a photograph just shortly after the completion of Hillman Hall, but before the rest of the transformation of the campus. So you see this beautiful kind of central LA, but it's surrounded by a sea of parking. So that transformation was pretty amazing and transformative. You can see here where all that parking was converted to park. And the location of Hillman Hall you see right there is in a very kind of strategic location on campus where it's adjacent to the iconic Brookings Hall up on the hill. And also it helps to kind of mitigate some of the topography. You can see the kind of stairs right there occurring. And at about this same time, the university was interested in kind of mapping movement on campus. So using some iPhone apps, we were able to kind of track information about cyclists noted in red, and then pedestrians noted in green. And so you can kind of see these, wear marks, if you were, of where people are actually heavily traversing. And then the area on the right, and this was, at the time of construction, so of the East End. So you don't see nearly the density that there is right now on the eastern portion of the campus. So Hillman Hall is on the right-hand part of this plan diagram, and it kind of completes the Brown School campus as an ensemble of existing buildings, Brown Hall and Goldfarb Hall, and it connects the circulation paths both internally and externally to really make this as a kind of cohesive campus within a campus. And it's also, as I mentioned, kind of on the downslope of the hill. So Hillman Hall actually made the whole site much more accessible. So you can actually use the building to navigate a lot of the changes in topography. So what we started out with before any design occurred is we had these workshops that included not only the dean and faculty and students from the Brown School, but other key administrators from the university, and also some kind of key members of our design team. So we had at the table our mechanical engineers, Heidi sustainability, we had our civil engineers all at the table early on to kind of witness what was important for the client. And that was kind of establish the tenor and attitude of the design phases going forward. So here I'll turn over for Amy temporarily to describe some of the Brown School initiatives.
Great, thank you, Neil. It was just a wonderful summary that you provided of the project, and great memories for me, for sure. So the Brown School is on the Danforth campus of Washington University in St. Louis, and the school is home to 3 different graduate school programs: social work, public health, and social policy. And these 3 fields, just the core tenets of social justice and health and well-being, are integral to what faculty teach, what students practice, and just the whole sense of the school. The school was the first, could you go back 1 second? First founded in 1913, and as Neil said, it consists now of 3 buildings. In 2008, the school started a program of public health and almost doubled in size with faculty and research centers. And that's why we needed this new building, and started to collect data on the best ways to do that for the Brown School. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we wanted the building to express these core values of transparency, health, diversity, inclusiveness, inspiration, and sustainability. And it was at those meetings that my colleague and I thought, wow, this would be a great research study. We call it a natural experiment. We have time, because it takes time to build a building, to collect data before and after. And so that is what initiated our interest in this. Also, that there was research coming out that we know that these social and health problems are really complex, and it's not one discipline that's going to solve all these problems. So we need to collaborate with one another. And the way the older buildings are designed, you go in your office, you shut the wooden door, and no one knows you're there. So a space that could create places and opportunities to meet and talk and collaborate is really important to what we're striving to do as our discipline's mission. We also wanted to create strong indoor-outdoor connections, not only for the occupants, but for the people outside. We are Washington University in St. Louis, and universities often have a lack of connection with the communities around them. By having the glass and the transparent outside of the building, people from the community can look inward, and it just increases that sense of belonging. And then as I'm a physical activity researcher at heart, so I was really interested in how this new building could be designed and be connected with the existing building to change behaviors of the occupants. Next slide. So just to reiterate some of these health and wellness concepts, to create this healthy workplace, to plan and encourage physical activity, to provide a mixed use community of spaces. So I study a lot of policies and broader environment design and how that impacts health. So if you look at the way communities are designed, people are more physically active if there's lots of destinations. So we kind of thought about the Hillman Hall as one of those mixed use communities. There's faculty offices, there's classrooms, there's spaces, there's places to eat. And it's not just that one stop destination. So that can increase movement and then consequently collaboration and interaction among people. I mentioned the connection of outdoors and just the current and future adaptability. We are not a stagnant school. We are growing by leaps and bounds. And so we wanted a building that can adapt to the future. And we found that it was adaptable to a pandemic as well, which Neil will talk about in a little bit. And then just to increase workplace satisfaction, like Natalia was talking about, we wanted the occupants to be happy with where they worked and be excited to come to work and be excited to show their workspace to others. And so those were our core goals of this project.
Great. Thank you, Amy. So one of the organizing principles of our building design was to create a very clear circulation path through the building. And that manifested itself in the creation of what we call the street. And along that street are a variety of program uses that contribute to the mixed community that Amy was talking about. And then at the ends of that street, we strategically located what we called social stairs at each end. And we'll give you some examples of how that show you how that street really kind of interconnects all of these different uses together. And along that street, you can have actually these kind of gathering spaces, such as we're looking here into the forum. And that forum space really is the heart of the Brown School. It is the kind of go-to place for kind of informal gathering where you can take your lunch, sit, look out onto the campus, and you're looking back onto the original Brown School Hall building in the background there. And it's kind of casual interaction. But that same space can also be used for much more formal presentations. It has great acoustics. There's a lot of controls for lighting and AV recording and broadcasting capabilities. As I mentioned before, circulation and physical activity was built into the design of Hillman Hall. And one of those elements is the social stairs, which are designed, to be kind of wide and spacious, have a lot of daylight being brought into them, and afford views out into the landscape. And it provides a really attractive option to using the elevator. The other interesting feature about this project is that we included a cafe called the Grounds for Change. And that Grounds for Change was really intended to feature healthy menu options, which is affecting physical health. And the interesting is that the food service provider works with local restaurateurs to feature some of their rotating menus, and is also a kind of social engagement feature of the project with the community. Classrooms was a really important element in the program, since it's an academic building at Brown School. And so we created these very flexible learning environments. And they sit above a raised floor, not unlike what Natalia was talking about, where We use the underfloor space for a raceway for flexibility of data and electrical, but also we're utilizing underfloor air distribution and displacement ventilation, which provides for a very comfortable and energy efficient environment, as well as the connection to the outside with abundant natural light coming on in. The street continues on the upper floors, where we have primarily research offices for faculty, but it's also mixed with classrooms and social gathering of lounge space. And also, if you notice where the open to below notes are here, we have 2 interior gardens, which I'll show you some images later on in the presentation. But not unlike a lot of traditional office spaces, here's a picture of Goldfarb and Brown halls, which are double loaded, soulless corridors. And as an option to that, we kind of flip that model. And so we place the private offices on the interior, lined with glass walls, and put the shared open offices on the exterior, which allowed them a lot of daylight and exposure to the exterior. And the private office on interiors benefit from that same kind of shared light in the very transparent nature of that barrier. And so here's a kind of a typical open office that's part of a typical research suite. Ergonomics was really important for us to, when it came to outfitting the office spaces. All the private offices have sit-stand desks, which has become a very popular feature. And then another initiative to promote more physical activity, we banned private printers from the private offices. So there are shared printing stations that occupants then get up from their desk and walk to. And that not only provides some additional physical activity, but also for the social engagement. Being a very diverse community that spends a lot of time in the building, we designed these kind of comfortable lounge spaces that foster collaboration and interaction. And art was also integrated. So what you can see in the background here is an art installation by artist Ann Hamilton. These are some examples of where we're designing connection to the outdoor environment that promotes the biophilic connection. And on 2 levels of our research floors, you have this double height space that includes an interior garden. And then on the exterior and rooftop, we also had some additional outdoor spaces that we intended for relaxation and gathering. And then also in the landscape, we had opportunities for outdoor classrooms. And that has become even more valuable, in this time of COVID. So here's an example just taken in the last year where another part of our kind of landscape area around the building has been used for as an outdoor classroom. The forum wasn't originally intended to be used as a classroom, but because of the need to be flexible and adapt to the kind of changing needs, the forum space has been used as a classroom. And the forum has been used for other unintended uses, as I'll show you here next, which is quite a fun example of how the forum has been used. And it's being used for an indoor rowing championship. So what could be more appropriate for a school of social work and in a building that we were trying to promote physical activity, but to have an indoor rowing championship occurring within its forum. So that's kind of a fun unintended use. And now I'll turn it over to Amy, who will talk about the research.
Great, thanks. So the next things I'm going to talk about are the study that we conducted on Hillman Hall, and talk about some of the ways that if you were interested in using some of the techniques we used for our study to review in our toolkit that we produced, as well as an article describing some of our findings. So BEEP, it started out as a funny term, but it's just a shorter way of saying Brown School Expansion Evaluation Project. And my colleagues, I'd like to mention my colleague Erin Hipp, and the other people who worked on the study, Cheryl Valco and Ramya Ramadaz. So just to give you a little bit of a timeline here, in 2014, after those meetings that helped lay the foundation for the design of the building, we started to prepare the study. And as I mentioned, we call this a natural experiment, but we're also limited in time that we have to hurry up and collect data before the building's built and people move in. So we planned to collect data in many different ways, which I'll show you in a minute. And then we measured prior to moving in the building, 2015, and then 1 year after in 2016. Takes a long time to analyze data because we collected so much of it, but then in 2018, we published a research article as well as the toolkit. So our study got lots of press. So we have a great PR department at WashU, and we presented the study to them, and they presented it to the press, and it was published in the Wall Street Journal, as well as several other outlets, about the importance of these indoor workspaces to health. So as I mentioned, I'm a physical activity researcher. So we were interested in movement between buildings, sedentary behavior, sitting is the new smoking, and research shows that even if you exercise, if you sit for prolonged periods of time, it changes your metabolism in a negative way. So getting up and moving around is really important. Thus the standing workstations. And then the team science part, the collaboration, we wanted to scientifically measure changes in collaboration through a bunch of different mechanisms, like looking at chance interactions and then social networks. So we just took advantage of all this new technology that was coming out, that it's not so new anymore. But we used activity monitors, ActivePal, which I'll talk a little bit more in detail about, ecological momentary assessments. These are real-time data collection text messages. So you'll get a text message certain times a day, very quick, ask you a question. And we use that to collect data in real time. We also use surveys on physical activity and workplace satisfaction. We used observations. So students helped us stand and count people who were making the choice between elevators and stairs, for example. We also observed how people were using public spaces like the spaces in Goldfarb and Brown, as well as the new forum. We conducted focus groups with students, staff, faculty, and other stakeholders. And as I mentioned, conducted this formal social network analysis to see how people collaborate with one another before Hillman and after Hillman. So these are activity monitors, and they were placed on the thigh of the people who wore them. And they were people who were moving into Hillman, people who were staying in Goldfarb and Brown. And then we used a control group of the School of Architecture, which is right next door to Hillman. And they wore them for different periods. And the reason that we chose this instead of the Fitbits and everything like that is this gives data on sit-stand transitions, as well as other movements that the other ways to collect data does not provide. So we asked people to tape these things on their legs, and they wore them not once, but twice, before Hillman and post-Hillman. And we found that there was a 24% overall increase in physical activity pre and post. So I really think that just having the spaces to walk to and connecting with colleagues and going to get food in the space really helped increase physical activity. And there was a 23% increase in hours standing. And I think this had a lot to do with the provision of standing desks for many people, not only standing desks, but there are lots of spaces that students can stand and work on their computers or do homework throughout the building. And while it's not as important as living a physically active, healthy lifestyle, it is a component of that. So not sitting as much and creating those spaces for standing was important. And a 35% increase in steps per week. So that, that if you think about the Fitbits and the things that measure for the goal of 10,000 steps a day, there was a 35% increase pre to post. And this is an example of that ecological momentary assessment. It's this real-time sampling of current behavior. So these are some of the questions that we asked, in the past 60 minutes, which of the following have you used to print? Private printer, there were choices like that. Have your office lights been on? Have you run into a colleague, an incidental meeting with a colleague? But those are some of the questions that we asked, and we asked them 3 times a day for a week at a time, pre and post. We also included questions about sustainability. That was the print one. And then we did a formal survey. We tried to use valid and reliable surveys just in order to make sure that we were measuring these things correctly. And we found great improvements in things like satisfaction with workplace. In addition to these methods, we used common area observations. So soon after the building was open and the semester started, people were complaining because they didn't have places to sit, and there was one person occupying a whole table. And this didn't sit well with people. They wanted more space. So rather than adding more chairs, we decided to do a little experiment by doing these family style tables where we put them together where people would be more likely to sit together. And so taking pictures at different times of the day and assessing how many people were at each table, what they were doing pre and post changing this table style. And overall, there was a 20% increase in just general movement. And it not only had to do with the physical placement of the building, but the amenities within the building. There were showers, there's bike racks, and there's lots of places that connect with the rest of the university where people would move around. And then as I mentioned, the importance of collaboration to our disciplines. And so we wanted to formally look at this and how it might have changed with the addition of Hillman Hall. So there's a technology called social network analysis, and you do a survey pre and post, and you ask people who they connect with and at what level, and then you put all this data into a program, and you end up with something that looks like this, that shows the strength of connections between people. And we looked at 3 different components of this connection: research, teaching, and social. And we analyzed the changes pre and post. And we noticed that there was density increases from this social network analysis, 25% in research, 72% in teaching, and 113% social. That one kind of, we were glad to see that one, that these social interactions increased so much after Hillman. And one thing I wanted to point out about the stairs that Neil was talking about, the stairs have large landings, and they're wide. So I can't tell you how many times you see someone and you stop and you chat for a second, and you don't have to email back and forth a million times. And that's what we hear a lot from people who use the stairs. And it's these, like I just mentioned, these chance interactions where you just can stop and chat for a minute. The transparency allows you to see who is there, and you can stop and chat with them. And that's something that we found both in the surveys, through the EMAs, and in our focus group discussions. 19% agreed that the building enhanced the work with others. As Neil mentioned, there are these great spaces where you could just sit and talk. You don't have to sit in your office or other spaces. You have these beautiful spaces that are conducive to people meeting together, and either meeting in a social way, like having lunch, but also meeting for work purposes. And again, just to emphasize that, 48% reported an increase in social connections, and this was similar to what we saw with the social network analysis. So the overall results, we saw an increase in workplace satisfaction, satisfaction with the building, and then just individual satisfaction. And the quote here, there's a human factor that went into planning, creating space that is healthy, beautiful, and productive for the people who inhabit it.
We spend so much time at work, 40 plus hours a week in this building. And so we have to make sure that the building has features that makes it easy to be healthy, makes the healthy choice the easy choice. So stairwell placement, how your office is designed, opportunities to meet other people socially during the day. Those are all aspects that make a building healthy. So we're looking at physical activity and sedentary behavior. They say sitting is the new smoking now, and people have long commutes and sit in their cars and then come and sit at their desks, and it's very unhealthy, even if you exercise. We are using accelerometry to measure physical activity during the day. So we collected baseline data of people who are moving, staying, and then a control group to see how much they move during the day and how the new building and features in the new building may influence how much they sit and move. We'll be analyzing the survey data. We did stair observations, how many people use the stairs versus the elevators, and we anticipate that that will change because the stairwells are designed so differently here. Giving people the opportunity to raise their workstation and stand for a while they work, and just the way the three buildings are situated, and the cafe in the new building is causing people to come over and meet with people in the forum. One of the components that we're studying is collaboration and organizational behavior, and how people feel about their culture of work is really important to their social health. And so having the opportunities to have supportive coworkers and develop these relationships is very important to mental health and social health. Can you take a little break from your workspace, and is there a place to go outside or inside that sort of will revitalize you? This is the interior garden. 2 stories of glass windows, and the plants really give it a sort of a peaceful place. There's been some studies that show negative impact of increased exposure to fluorescent light without exposure to the outside. And so this building was designed to utilize as much natural light as possible. Glass windows. A lot of people don't even have their office lights on during the day because there's so much natural light. So much thought of these things were put into the new design of the building. We're just, we're an evidence-based school, so we're looking at the evidence of how these things influence health of the occupants of the building.
And that's it. Any final words, Neil?
Neil, you're on mute.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Amy, for that great presentation and the video, which I think is really great to illustrate the dynamic quality of the architecture and interior spaces. But I wanted to acknowledge with this slide the contributors that were part of this team that made this building so successful and being possible.
Excellent. Okay, so with that, we will open up to Q&A. So please add some questions to the Q&A. So Natalia, I think these first 2 that have been posted are for us. So first question is, was any type of misting system installed in the cool intake side of the wind catchers? Do you want me to take that one, Natalia?
You can. I mean, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't believe so, but I think what I will do is, oh, how do I type? Oh, I screwed up. Okay, type answer. Oh, I think I screwed that up. Okay, yeah, if you just go to Monodraft's website too, the units that we used were called, they were solar boost, and they actually have a little PV array on them because there is a fan in them just to help with all the air movement. So they're totally passive and energy free natural ventilation, but yeah, no misting. And then this is a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the circadian rhythms and the lighting design, Natalia?
Yes. I mean, I would have loved that it was circadian. Actually, it's something I've spoken to the office about, but at the time, I think it was a while back. It was 2011, so it wasn't as available as it is right now. And I even notice it with our projects right now. It's like, of course, we have circadian lighting in an office building, but at the time it wasn't so prevalent. And I do wish we could have, the actual tone of the light change as the, as the outside changes, as the sunlight changes, but we don't in this building, not right now. Not yet. And
The
there was another
version 2.0.
That's right.
Yeah. Are the controls on autopilot or by specific space? And I'm assuming that's related to the lighting controls.
It is by space, because I think the lights in certain areas may be on or off versus others. Heidi, you may know better than me. I'm literally talking as a user here. Like, what do I remember from the lighting? I feel like there's different sensors throughout. So, you know, if say in the mezzanine it's darker or lighter, it'll turn on at a different rate from the rest of the office.
That's right. And as you said, right, those sensors are right at the light fixture. So it's right at the point where
so it probably controls
the
4 around each of those pyramid kind of diffusers.
Okay, on outside air / net vent, is it filtered? Is IAQ MERV level filtered, or that's an upgrade? So for the wind catchers, I believe that there is a filter in that assembly. Natalia had a small diagram in one of her slides that showed that assembly. So yeah, I mentioned at the fan level that there's a filter down there. So she said, right, those wind catchers, they catch the wind from whatever direction it's coming in, because there's louvers on all 4 sides.
Right.
And as that wind is coming in, that fresh air, then that actually, you know, just that forces out that warm, stale air, and that's all done passively. I don't know if the question is specifically what's the MERV level of the filtration in the office, and I don't know that offhand. But whoever asked that question, if you'd like to follow up with me after this, I can dig that up. Okay, so that's a question. Oh, go ahead. Oh, maybe Hillary wants you to put it in the chat.
I think it was Bill, and I think he fell off.
Okay. All right. Well, I've got a question that I'd love for you all to address, and I think for everyone who's listening to this panel, what advice do you have in convincing clients to do this level of effort, to take this extra investment? I mean, I'm hoping that we really showcased the benefits of it, but how do you make that case, and when do you do that in the project timeline? And I'd love for all 3 of you to touch on that.
Well, I could start off. You know, I think in our example with Hillman Hall, this was really a unique opportunity where you had a very enlightened and active participant in moving this evaluation. So, and it does take a lot of time and effort and kind of will to be able to do not only the post evaluation, but also the pre, you know, setting the baseline and establishing a really valid method of research to this kind of data gathering. So it's not without effort. And I think the benefit of doing this is that people, particularly in business and academia, that want to have the data, that want to have the evidence, you know, that's what makes it valid, and that's what makes it convincing and credible to have. So I think there's a lot of value in doing this kind of work. And I think for other architects to promote and ask for these kind of services to foster this kind of rigor within our profession is something that is really important for us to strive for.
Yeah, I feel like I also touched upon it a little bit while I was talking. Like, really one of our drivers even to do the net zero for our building was, you know, we try and convince the client, we're trying to push this on them. Well, let's do it ourselves. You know, we can't talk about it and then not do it ourselves. And we wanted to do it because there is a responsibility, I feel, as an architect, as a client, I think, and it depending on the client, I think there's a different way you can kind of display it to them. You know, I don't want to talk about specifics, but we have one type of client that was going going all out. We were going to go for the petals. We're going to do living building challenge. It was all very exciting at the beginning. We were going to do the material petal, which was really would have been hard work. But, in the end, that portion fell through. But, others like we're going for LEED Platinum still with this building. I do feel like it has to be brought to the client right at the beginning. You've got to excite them. One is the responsibility to do something good for the world. The other one is, okay, if that's not the driving force, then what will it give you? There's a story here. This is a good story, what you're doing to your building. Will that help with the donations? Will that, all there's so many facets to it. I feel that, different clients almost respond to different, different things that will maybe inspire them to do this. But for us, something I didn't mention is we love having our client meetings in our office. How you have these meetings and everybody's comparing to the space you're in. Oh, well, how big is the window you're in? Or, what did you do in this building? And we love that. Oh, well, in this building, we did this, and we love to promote it. We are so proud of it. And I think that, that excitement then makes them excited. And so for us, that's one thing that we do sort of have that we like to bring to our client. And we did it. And so this is a way that we want you to also kind of follow through with it.
And I think the more that studies are done like this and promoted in places like this and beyond, there will be a culture change where the clients will actually be asking for it versus the other way around.
And I think that's amazing. And we have had clients, which I think is wonderful, that we are always up for it, obviously, but for the client to bring it on to us, we're all in. We'll bring everyone in.
And Amy, have you gotten to do POE at other buildings outside of the Brown School on campus?
Off campus. So the hospital, which is on the other campus, some of their spaces, as well as Centene, which is a business that we work closely with in not too far away from campus.
That's great. And I think, I don't know, Amy, too, I think Hellman Hall has been like such a beacon for all the other schools, right? I mean, this is kind of the new campus standard now, right? People just love coming into the building and seeing the design and how happy everybody is, and, the beautiful daylight. I don't know if you want to touch on that a bit.
And in our ground floor, we have what they call pooled classrooms, where they seat 300 and 180, and those are classrooms that pull in undergraduate students, and our graduate students in our building kind of have a sense of they're taking up too much of our space because it is such a beautiful building, and this is where a lot of people congregate. And it is known across campus as a great place to study and socialize and connect with others.
Well, because we also were featuring some different variations on faculty office organization, the campus architect has used Hillman Hall a number of times to tour faculty through as an option to the kind of dreaded solid door, double loaded corridor scenario.
I'm pulled into those tours a lot because they walk right past my office and hey, would you describe the study that you did or the way the space is, and so that happens quite often.
Isn't this inspiring for the students? I mean, they must be so interested in what's going on. They must feel so special to be in this building.
Oh, definitely. Especially if they compare it to Brown Hall, which was built in 1935. And it's the huge difference.
That's great. Bill, we did lose you, I think, right when you were going to ask your question, so we did not hear your question.
Thank you, Heidi. My question was that my understanding is that the Center for the Built Environment has, that did a lot of work on underfloor air supply systems, concluded that if you use the underfloor air area as a plenum, that the distribution of air and the temperature delivered is quite variable. It's not consistent, and that they have moved towards recommending ducted systems in the plenum for the air delivery. You still can use the plenum for all sorts of other reasons, for cabling and stuff like that. So I just wondered if you could tell us, did you use ducting in these underfloor air systems, or were they basically using the space as a plenum? And what was your thinking about that?
For Morphosis, I don't believe we did. Neil, do you remember for
Hillman, yeah, I believe we did use the ducted delivery method, and that gave us better control. But and still, you have the flexibility of moving those registers wherever you want.
I do have a photo, and I see a duct, but I don't have the whole floor open. It's terrible that I don't know 100%, but I literally didn't say it was a plenum because I can see that there is ductwork under there. So I'm sorry, I have to get back to you on that one.
Great, thank you.
There was a question about acoustics. How was that considered, and how important is it? So maybe we can talk about Morphosis first.
That's a great one for Morphosis.
Natalia, right? Because when we had that spiderweb graphic up, actually acoustics across the board though is almost always the lowest ranked.
I know exactly why.
Yeah, can you please share about your story at Morphosis?
So when we were in Santa Monica, in the Santa Monica office, our office building was very separated. There was a whole parking lot between the office building and the workshop. And for the office, the building part of it, the creating, the actually putting things together is an integral part of the process. We don't want to separate them. So I feel like when we designed the Morphosis office, the new one, we went all the way the other way. The workshop there's a piece of glass separating the office and a workshop. There's a space for a door that we excluded. We wanted to completely be connected to the office. We wanted to know everything, as in that was the goal. But there's a problem. When the mill is on, it's very loud. You can hear it in the office. Is there a solution? Absolutely. Put a door there. There's no door right now. It's completely open. It's one space. And that is one thing that I think it can be disruptive. I mean, to some more than others. For me, it doesn't bother me. I just, get on with it, and it doesn't really affect me. But for other people, it does affect them. What about, we haven't talked about this, but what about when the wood's burning? You can smell that in the office, especially when the doors are open and it comes right through the workshop, right into the space. Yes, up the wind catcher, but you get the scent of it, and the wood is the best of it. There's others that you can also smell. But it is, I think it's because of our internal needs that we did that, and we love that. But then when somebody asks you, is it too loud? Nobody's asking you, do you prefer to have an open workshop where you're completely connected with the process? Or do you prefer, that's not the question. The question is, how are the acoustics? And then it's not just the workshop. We're right by the train. We're literally right at the train. So you can hear the train go by. You'll be at a meeting and suddenly, and that's it. Nobody can hear you and you can't hear anybody. But again, for me, that's part of the character of the space. It also brings a lot of urban life. I don't know. I feel like there's advantages and disadvantages to many things, and you have to weigh them out. If we really, really wanted to improve the acoustics, there's things we can do, and we can still do them.
Well, at Hillman Hall, acoustics was a big concern, and pushing some of these new initiatives of how design was occurring that deviated from the traditional. We did some acoustic modeling. So we relied on kind of technology to test some of the acoustical isolation issues related to the forum. So the forum actually is a double height space, and it directly opens onto that street on the second level where we have research offices right off those corridors. So we had to kind of model that to understand what the impacts and where we had to apply more acoustic isolation in those conditions. The other thing is that, experimenting with these new office arrangements and relying more heavily on open office areas where traditionally acoustics is an issue of, voice transfer and lack of concentration and so forth. Again, we look toward technology. So we have a white noise system that actually helps quite a bit, and I'd like to hear from Amy about how that's working.
Yeah, I think that is working great. But when we first got there, the change in the office space from what people used to work in to where they were now, there was a shock in transition. And the main concern was noise, but also because people could see each other, they would interrupt their work. When you don't want to be interrupted if you're, in the middle of a project or something. So we devised our own system of these little kind of think of like red light, green light, yellow light things that you could put on your desk that just says, only interrupt me if the building's on fire, hopefully. But, or, sure, I'm working on whatever, you can approach me whenever. And that simple technique has solved a lot of problems.
There is a social component to working in these new environments, and that's something that the Brown School has dealt with very well.
Great. Hi, Noelle. Noelle's asking, can you talk about cost benefit of the sustainable measures that went beyond a comparable type of building? So I guess, Neil, do you want to answer that one and then?
Well, I could start just from what we understand about our institutional clients in academia, that providing healthy, comfortable work environments directly impacts retention, recruitment. So it does have a real tangible impact to a business and operating, and that's what schools are essentially. So I think being able to demonstrate that we have a very healthy work environment to recruit folks, and that the institution cares enough about the environment to push for a LEED Platinum building for their staff and faculty to work in is really significant. So I think it does represent quite a bit of value.
Yeah, I think there's the value that's it's not monetary, it's like, how can you put a cost on people's happiness, people's health, But I don't know so much about how much everything costs, but I actually did ask a question right before doing this presentation, which was, how much did our PV panels cost? Because they're expensive, and how long would it take to pay them off? And I don't know, Heidi, I don't know if you know the answer to that, but I got an answer, which was that after we'd got all our rebates, they were about $50,000, and that it would take about 8 years of saved energy to pay it back. So that means that actually right now we're not paying for them anymore. So we're just gaining right now in the office. Mm-hmm. So I was actually surprised. I was actually shocked. It was so quickly paid back. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Let's see. How has your experience been with school districts and similar clients, given how budget sensitive they can be? And maybe just kind of, we only have about 2 more minutes together, so maybe if anyone wants to take that quickly.
Well, I could just start perhaps on that one, is that, yes, it isn't without challenges in trying to adopt kind of new procedures and policy. And it does represent more time. I mean, there's no doubt that for a design team to provide this kind of service, and also the amount of time, you know, kind of required to participate in some of the research is also, you know, with time and effort applied to it. But I think there are clients that are interested in, again, having tangible results that come from a more rigorous study rather than just kind of anecdotal evidence. So I think that is the main importance.
Fantastic. Okay, well, we're just about at time, so big thank you, Natalia, Amy, Neil, for these excellent presentations and insights. For those of you that joined us, if you made it this far, AIA California staff will submit your continuing education credits for you. It should appear on your transcript in a few weeks. Always lots of great resources on aiacalifornia.org/climate action. And then more details will be shared with you all on the webinar series for the rest of this year. And just thank you again for taking the time to be with us today, and we hope you enjoyed the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.